can, my publisher sent out a recommendation of like 20 pages of what we should do. And so I am doing what she told me to do, but also it's a lot of fun because I've met a lot of people that are interested, not just in my novels, but when you're writing about your own writing, which is what I'm doing in blogging the novel, and I'll talk about at the end, is I put commentary in there, and it's really good because people then can see how a novel is put together. And like I said, it's my 21st, so I'm kind of an old hand at the game of writing a novel, and so that's why it's really good for me to kind of give you this. So have you guys written a novel, or you're interested in writing a novel, or?
I've started lots of them. No, how you think you always think you're going to start a novel. I haven't written a novel.
Well, this will help you because what I'm going to I'll start with the basic stuff. Here's my books. You already looked at my books over there. It's okay. Here's where you can find me. This is where I am writing about writing. Novel scenes at WordPress.com. If you go to this website, ldalford.com, my nom de plume is LD Alford. And I mistold Carla a little bit. My real name is Dr. Lionel Alford, but I'm not a medical doctor, so nobody have a heart attack. But my nom de plume is LD Alford, and that's what my books go by. And my professional website as an author is ldalford.com. You can find all of these connections to it. I am blogging the novel on the Zen of Writing, blogspot.com, Pilot Lion, and then I have a repost blog that redoes it about 6 months late or so, a few months late, intentionally. That's to get more blog traffic, but that's another technique. In any case, I'm going to start at the beginning, and many times people haven't heard this unless you've taken a writing class on novel writing, and how many are those, right? I mean, you're going to find them very rarely at a college or maybe community college or something like that. So let's talk a little about story, plot line, and theme. The story is a narration of a chain of events. This is basically the content of scenes. And what's so big about scenes? Because I write in scenes. And so if you've had problems getting your novel going, if you write with scenes, I'm going to give you kind of a boilerplate idea how to start and how to finish. So if you're kind of clogged up in your brain, you don't know how to make a novel work, you can make it work using, I don't like to say technique, it's the way I like to write novels. So if you take my style and then you make it your own, that's the way to do it. But this story element is the content of the scenes. The plot are the scenes put together that make the novel. And then the theme is a unifying idea. You gotta have that. There's so many novels, and when we talk in the review session or the session about how to work together to work on your novels, I'm going to talk about this, but specifically, a very critical point is you got to have a theme in your novel. You may have heard this a million times. If I could teach a whole nother class on how to do themes, but I'm just going to sit there with story, plot, and theme. Remember those, they're very important. So what's the big idea? The theme is that big idea. That's what we call inspiration. And again, in a lot of my writing on writing, I talk about, inspiration, how to get, right now I'm working on inspiration. My 22nd novel, I'm working on inspiration. I told my wife about it, she always goes, what are you doing? I write a lot of works with a very interesting, unique theme. And they're not the same theme, they're very different, but my wife always poo-poos them until she reads the novels, and then she goes, wow, But the thing is that you just have to have that unifying idea. What is your theme? I'm going to mention a little bit more about themes. But like, for example, if you're a novel, I'm a novel-length writer. I get novel-length inspiration, and I write novel-length novels. Other people are like a story-length writer. They get story-length ideas, like Ray Bradbury, for example, and then they swoosh them together into a novel. So if you're a story-length writer, this can help you because if you write already, you're writing in scenes. Short stories are scenes, maybe one or two, that have a cohesive end. If you're that kind of writer, write a million short stories, find those that are cohesive or make them cohesive and stick them together. But this will help you with that too. If you're like me, a novel-length writer, get a novel-length idea and you can't put it down on paper, well, what do? I'll show you how to fix that. But in any case, that's the point, you know, the story, plot, and theme. You don't have to think about those things when you're writing, but that, you know, kind of puts in your mind, well, this is what I'm kind of driving to. That inspiration comes from writing, and writing comes from inspiration. So if you wonder how to get inspired, write. And I've also written about this. If you go look at my blogs, you know, I've got some blog topics specifically about inspiration. I'll probably write some more. Because one big problem for people is, well, how do I get inspired? And I said, well, just write. If you just start writing, you'll find that inspiration comes. I can give you some ideas I did, but this isn't about inspiration. It's about how to write a novel. So, what is a novel? A novel is at least 50,000 words. It's no longer than 150,000. Now, the longest novel in the English language is Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. It's 1 million words. But guess what? You and I are never going to get a 1,000,000-word novel sold to anybody. So if you're looking for a publisher, you've got to be in this realm. My earlier novels are around 70,000 words, but I write for about a 100,000-word novel right now. That's kind of a price break point. So, you know, publishers, my publisher hasn't told me not to write a novel that's longer, but I can tell that, you know, the costs go up, the price goes up, the page count goes up, and that means the novel's much more expensive. So they're usually not going to jump on a new author unless they're really convinced of your book. You got to have a bestseller to begin with, pretty much, if you're going to write something outside it. And by the way, if you're writing over a 150,000-word novel, you probably need to trim it anyway. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but that's a whole nother subject. So how do you begin? If you're going to write, okay, and this is like basic goal setting stuff. So if you've heard this before, that's cool. If you're going to write a novel, you got to have a goal. So you say, my goal, when I get my inspiration, and I'm getting one, I'm perking one right now. Every 6 months I get this novel-length inspiration, bang, I start writing. I set a goal for myself of 1 chapter. For me, 1 chapter is 5,000 to 6,000 words. Yours doesn't have to be. Okay, I'm an overachiever. So you don't have to be like me, but I would recommend, like for example, right now, I probably write 20,000 words a day. Probably 10,000 of those words are in writing, like creative writing, and the other 10,000 are my job, because I do a lot of technical writing. So writing is a fundamental part of writing. And if you're going to write a novel, if you set yourself a goal to reach, then you'll do it. And like this,
as an overachiever, do you write your 10,000 words for your novel early in the morning, or do you have a discipline to it? You probably do. I'm just like curious, not that I'm going to copy your life, but I'm curious about you.
I'm an aviation consultant by my trade. I do flight tests, and I design aircraft, design things. So like I said, I'm kind of an overachiever. But when I'm not working on a consulting job, which is full time, I write from about 7 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. And I usually only stop to pet my dog and, you know, eat something so I don't die. Because when I get wrapped up in writing, the ideas just, they flow and flow and flow, and they flow to the point where you have to say, I gotta stop, because, you know, you're killing yourself. So but that's because it didn't start that way. When I first started, it took me, you know, 3 years to bang through a novel. I mean, for goodness sakes, I was like, you know, pulling my hair out trying to figure out how to write this thing. So when you first start, there's no problem with taking years and years to write something. But, you know, really, if you take years, it becomes less fresh, see, in your mind and your heart and what you want to do. For me, when I get this inspirational idea, but, you know, it's like once you practice doing anything, you know, you see these people doing gymnastics, you say, well, how can they do it? Well, they practice and practice and practice. And writing is the same way. Once you get to a point in writing where you practice, now I won't say that everything I write is perfect. It takes, you know, I probably, before my pre-pub readers see it, I've probably been through a novel 10 times or more. And then my pre-pub readers see it. And my pre-pub readers tear me apart. Well, they don't tear me apart as much as they should. But then usually I have other reviewers review it. And then by the time it gets to my editor is usually pretty happy. And then she comes back and has, of course, corrections or fixes. But that's the other thing. And, you know, that's a whole other topic. But as a writer, you can't have a chip on your shoulder. Once you get feedback, I mean, people tell you your writing is great. Some, you know, they're lying, you know. everybody's writing needs to be corrected or fixed. You know, and I'm not talking about grammar and spelling. Yes, ma'am.
I always felt like if they said, oh, it's great, it's fine, they just don't care enough. You know, they're just not really, they're passing you off, or they're not your best editor because they're not giving you, they're not giving it as much attention as it deserves, probably. If they're just saying it's fine.
They're not giving you the real feedback.
Right.
My daughter is great because she has no compunction about telling me she's an English major who has 3 degrees in engineering, another overachiever. But the thing is that she will tell me the truth, and what we'll do is we sit down and talk when we have a chance, and she'll tell me, you know, that's the thing. But she really likes my writing too. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's bad and good. You know, she likes my style, and my publisher likes my writing and my style, so that's both bad and good too. But in any case, you gotta set a goal. If you don't set a goal, you're not gonna achieve. And the goal is to write with a cohesive focus. So at least 50,000 words. And how do you figure that out? Your word count on Word or whatever software you're using will tell you how many words it is. And don't count all your words. You know, just write. Just write.
And you find, like you say, your goal is 5,000 or 6,000, and that's a chapter. But I mean, once you start writing and you write for a while, you just seem to know when you're done with a chapter, and then after a while you start to know. It's like for me, it seems like 3,000 to 4,000, 3,500 is about where I am for a chapter. 3,500 words, I can almost, without meaning to, I see, oh wow, I've got kind of a, you know, it's sort of, so it's going to be different for different people. Like as far as the length of your chapter, it's just going to be whatever your rhythm is, I guess.
I'm giving you an idea, but don't take my idea and try and copy exactly what I do.
Oh, I have to have 6,000 words or it's not a chapter.
Right. The reason I do that is because I'm just anally retentive that way. It makes it easy for me. And I'll show you actually how to set your chapters in a second here, and you'll get the point because, well, you'll see the point. Anyway, so that's your goal, right? Story, plot, and theme. About 50,000 words minimum. Don't write more than 150 or really start editing like crazy. So, the story is the scenes, the plot's a compilation of scenes, and the theme is an overreaching idea. They all have to come together. I don't know if anybody ever told you this. They all have to come together. So the story is going along, that's the scenes. The plot is the compilation of those themes, of those scenes. And the theme is that overarching idea. They gotta come together. Where do they come together? At the climax of the novel. Now, those of you who are classically trained have seen this little diagram, this little chart before, this little thing before. All novels, classical novels, are written this way. And let me tell you, if you want to try to write a novel that isn't in this form, go ahead. But you know what? Nobody's going to want to read it. You may do a Roman fleuve like John Dos Passos, but guess what? How many people are reading John Dos Passos nowadays for entertainment, right? He's a spot in the fabric. Roman fleuve is way out, all right? But in any case, you got the beginning. I'm going to talk about the beginning. You got the build up to rising action. You have a climax. You have the resolution or falling action, and you have the denouement. The denouement is basically, well, let me see, what is this? The beginning. That beginning is the initial scene. The initial scene. This draws your readers into your novel. It's got to be hard-hitting. It's critical and necessary. It hooks your readers. You've heard this before. I know you heard this before. It sets the novel. It sets the novel in story, plot, and theme. And without a strong beginning, don't write any further. But this is the thing. When you get an idea, and this is what I do. When I get an idea, an inspiration, right? I write the first scene. The first scene is always action. Always oriented in action. Because if you don't, even if you have a placid novel, find the most action-oriented beginning you can. The most exciting scene. Look, you wouldn't be writing it if it wasn't exciting, right, to you. So find what is that, well, for me, okay, when I'm setting a novel, and this is really important, setting a novel, what you do is you get an inspiration, and usually your inspiration isn't milquetoast. Your inspiration is, I want to write